We are Life Church Livonia.
All right, good morning, Life Church Livonia. How is everyone? Now, you guys are actually more awake than first service. I appreciate that about you. It is so good to have you here. My name is Brian. I'm the pastor here at Life Church, and I would love to meet you if we've never had a chance. So let's connect after the service for sure. And we are just excited that you're here, and really excited that you're here during a part of our hashtag Struggles sermon series. And we started last week, and if you weren't here, we'd love to get you caught up. You can go online, and all of our sermons from all of our previous series are there online. You can check those out. And really what we're doing during this whole series is talking about 5 things in your life and my life that God values for us. Things that we need in our life. And that are important to God that we experience and that we struggle to step deeply into as a result, in part, because of technology. And we're not saying that technology causes these struggles, because these are age-old struggles, but certainly that the technology that we use and the social media that we engage with on a regular basis exacerbates those struggles. And so if you're here today and you're thinking, man, I don't even really engage much in technology, I'm super old school, I really believe that even if you are old school and you have no idea even what this little symbol is up here, it's okay, because these are issues that you and I deal with regardless of what technology does. But I just really believe technology makes it much worse. And so last week we talked about contentment, and I don't know anyone who wouldn't want to be more content, honestly. And so we talked about the struggle to find contentment and how really very few of us have it. And so check that out. Next week we're going to talk about authenticity and the struggle to be authentic. And I actually think that week 1 and week 3 are intimately connected, because part of the reason we struggle with a lack of contentment is that no one's authentic anymore. And so we compare our behind-the-scenes life to their highlight reel of their life, because they're not really being authentic about the real them. And that creates a struggle, this ongoing struggle in our life that we're not really sure what to do with. And so today, we're going to lean into relationships and intimacy, friendship. And what does it look like to actually step deeper into friendship and deeper into intimacy? And I believe that for all of us, this is relevant, deeply relevant. And before we go any further, I want to be really clear that I think that technology, that social media, that these little devices that we carry around with us everywhere, that they have their purpose, and that actually I love the way that we can connect using our phones, especially. And I was going through my phone this week, and I actually have text messages from a certain person in my phone that I've had saved in my phone since 2013. And the people in the room that love everything clean and neat and delete every message after they have read it, you're like cringing inside. But the reason that I still have text messages in my phone from 2013 from this one person is because they are no longer with us. They passed away. His name was Larry Sherman, and he was the director of church planting for the Great Lakes Conference that we're a part of here. And he was one of the first people to ever look at me and see me and say, I really believe God made you to be a church planter. And I have texts in my phone that he sent me, encouraging me, engaging me. And he passed away 1 month before I moved to Livonia, not knowing anyone to start this church. And so I kept those messages. And in that case, I love technology. I love that when I'm having a hard day and I'm struggling with my identity as a pastor, that I can go back to the man that I admired the most in this region of life, and I can read that he believed in me. I love that. But the problem is that the misuse or abuse of the technology that we have available to us all the time can actually become an inhibiting factor in us experiencing the type of relationships and the type of intimacy that God longs for us to experience, the type of relationships that God created us to experience. And so what we're going to do today is we're just going to jump right into Scripture. And we're going to go directly to a situation that Jesus had that I believe is one of the most intimate moments with his disciples, with his closest brothers that he had, that we get to see in Scripture. One of these moments that we're like, this was us being a fly on the wall. We get to see what it was like to hang out with Jesus. And we find it in the Gospel of John in chapter 13. And what's going on here is that Jesus is about to be arrested. He's about to be put in this false trial and about to go to the cross. And he's hanging out with his closest followers, his closest brothers, for the final time. They share a meal together. And in the midst of that, he gets down on his hands and knees and he washes their feet. And some of you are like, man, that will never happen at any of my dinner parties. And I get it, but culturally speaking for them, that was something that was common. But what was uncommon about it is that typically it wasn't friends doing it for friends or leaders doing it for their followers. It was typically a role that a servant played. And Jesus is like, no, I want to show you that I came to love you in a way that is countercultural to everything that you've ever experienced before. So in the midst of that moment, think about the beautiful relational intimacy that is just happening with Jesus and his followers. And then he says this in John 13, starting in verse 34. A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you, so you must love one another. By this, everyone will know that you are my disciples if you love one another. What I want you to pay attention to is what he didn't say. What he didn't say in this place, he didn't say that they will know that you're my people. They'll know that you are my disciples. They'll know that you're my followers if you get your theology right. He didn't say that. He didn't say if you memorize the right verses of Scripture or the right creeds or the right doctrine, they'll know you're my followers. He didn't say that. Theology is important, but it's not what he said in that moment. He didn't lean into it and say, they'll know you are my followers by your church attendance. At that point, church attendance didn't even exist, right? This is a new thing, post-Jesus, that we started doing. Church attendance is important. It's part of how we step into community. It's part of how we celebrate what God's already doing in our week as we come and we worship together. It's part of the place where many people come to step into a relationship with God through Jesus for the very first time. It's important, but it's not the primary marker that Jesus is saying will identify people who are his followers. He didn't say that that they'll know that you are my people as a result of how you vote or who you vote for or what kind of causes you're about. He didn't say that they'll know you're my followers because of the right bumper sticker that you have in your car or whether or not you have one of those fish on the back of your car that we call an ichthus or the cross that you wear. In fact, some of you maybe shouldn't have that bumper sticker on your car because I've seen you drive. I'm going to take that off. It's actually giving the opposite message. That's not what he said. What did he say? He said, they'll know that you are my people if you love one another. So the primary marker of a person who follows Jesus should be their relationships and the level of intimacy within those relationships. It's really clear here. Jesus is giving them some of his final words, some of the final calls to live into something that he has started, he's created. And he's saying the primary marker of a person who follows me will be the types of relationships they have and the depth of the intimacy within those relationships, the way that you love each other. That's how people will know that you are mine and I am yours. And like it or not, no matter where you stand on the issue of technology and social media, the reality of it is that technology is messing with the way we do relationships and therefore is messing with our ability to live into this commandment that Jesus gave us to love one another. Technology is messing with our relationships. I want to give you a couple ways that that's happening. And the first is this, is that friendship is evolving. Friendship is, I do this because it's evolving in such a way that in some ways you couldn't even recognize it for what it really is anymore. I just saw a video online the other day that was an interview with with a bunch of grandparents in a nursing home in Europe. I think it was in Great Britain. And they were interviewing these people about friendship. And the question was, how do you become someone's friend? How do you live into this idea of friendship without phones? And all of these people, they were in their late 80s, 90s. Some of them were over 100, and they were saying, "Well, it's super easy. You just talk with people." And they were dumbfounded that people would think you can't be friends without text, or without Instagram, or without Facebook, Or that Twitter, or whatever it is or that Snapchat. How do you friend without that stuff? And these elderly people were like, well, it's super easy. You just engage one another. You're present with one another. I was dumbfounded that they even had to make the video, but it's true. Friendship is evolving. The stats out there say that the average adult Facebook user has 328 friends. 328 friends is the average number of Facebook friends that an adult user has. I actually went online and looked when I saw that stat, and I realized that I have over 1,000. Some of you are like, I'm going to check my Facebook. I want to see if I'm more popular than Brian. Listen, I don't feel popular at all. The reason I have that many friends is because I've served churches in numerous places around the country, and so I have friends from all over this wide network, and my wife makes fun of me all the time for the number of friends I have. And I actually went through and deleted many people that I have no contact with any longer, or the people that I'm like, gosh, I can't even remember who they are. That's embarrassing, right? Yeah. Friendship is evolving. So at the same time that we have an average of 328 friends on Facebook, similar research looks at it and kind of digs in a little deeper and looks at it from a different perspective and asks the question, how many close friends would you say you have? And the research says that the average American only has 2 close friends. 2 close friends. There's a huge discrepancy between 328 and 2. And on top of that, 25% of people that were surveyed in America said they had 0 close friends. Not a single one. And sometimes when I hear research like this, when I read about it, I'm super skeptical. I begin to think to myself, well, I'm not sure if what was their sample size like? Who did they survey? Where were they at? Sometimes I'm super skeptical of research, but this time, when I heard these numbers, I actually think that this might not even be high enough. The people that say they have 2 close friends, I think it might even be lower than that in some circles. That the number or the percentage of people that feel as if they have no close friends, it actually might be higher than 25% if we were actually authentic. This is an epidemic in our country. And it is a social malady that we have to address, that we have to look at. And what I want to be really clear about right now is that I am not perfect about this. This is a struggle for me. When we talk about #struggle, we're not talking about things that I've perfected and I've figured out and the rest of you peons need to get on in the program with me, right? I'm not the master and you're the student sitting at my feet. This is me saying I struggle with this too. Kylie and I were talking about it in between services. I'm like, man, this sermon is hard to preach because I feel like I'm preaching it myself as much as I'm preaching it to anyone else because we all desperately crave relationships and intimacy, but we're not good at it. We struggle. There's plenty of online activity, but a limited amount of personal intimacy. And part of that is that our real life friends can't live up to the virtual ones. They can't. Our real life friends cannot live up to the virtual friends that we have. And that leads us to the next issue, is that we become addicted to instant affirmation. We are literally addicted to instant affirmation. They can do brain studies of individuals and see what this looks like, that when you are getting likes on a photo or people are sharing your Instagram post or you're getting a follow for a follow or whatever it is, and some of you that don't use social media, you're like, I have no idea what you're even talking about. But when they've studied people that do use it, or when they engage some of these video games that we play on our phones and other things that you do, and even some of the shows we watch, is that it creates a system of instant affirmation where the reward center of your brain is being triggered and dopamine is being released, and you become addicted to that dopamine release. We are literally addicted to a drug that our body creates. And it's giving us this instant affirmation, this instant feeling, this feel-good moment. And so in the short term, it's giving us what we feel like we need, but in the long term, it's creating what sociologists and psychologists are calling deferred loneliness. deferred loneliness. But we're lonely in the moment. We do this activity. We engage in this behavior. We pick up our phones. We feel better in the moment, but we feel terrible later. Deferred loneliness. And because of this, loneliness is building in our souls. It's building in our bodies. To the point that we don't even know how to act anymore. We begin to feel hopeless that we could actually ever have real, beautiful, intimate relationships. To the point where it becomes such a problem that if people don't like our pic or don't share our post or whatever it might be, or don't respond to our text, that we get upset. Why didn't he like my pic? I liked his. Why didn't he follow me? She did this, he did this, they did this. And we get frustrated if we don't have the instant affirmation. It's addictive. It's gotten to the spot where I can actually follow you online. I can know all about your life. I can know what your kids' names are, how old they are, where they go to school, how they did in their last test, what you ate for dinner, whether it was good or not, where you're going on vacation, where you wish you could go on vacation. I can know all of that about you and never have an actual conversation with you. It's a problem. And what it's creating is that friendship is now on our terms. It's no longer something that we agree on between two people, that it's mutual. It's all on me. I get to decide whether or not that I comment on your post, whether or not I engage you, or whether I disengage. I get to decide what I do. We do it with our phones. I get to decide whether or not you can see that I read your text. And sometimes I know people that hide it. They don't turn on read receipts on their phone. I actually never bring my phone on stage because it's distracting and I don't need it. It's a useless thing. And one time when I was preaching, I had my phone in my pocket and it rang, and I never want that to happen ever again. But today I brought it on stage. And during first service, as I'm standing up here preaching, and my phone is open and the screen is up, it's going off like crazy. Because Alex, our worship leader, ran the half marathon this morning for Team World Vision, and he sent a pic to like 14 people. Some of whom were sitting in this room while I was preaching, and they're all replying. And my phone is exploding, right? But here's confession moment, is that it's overwhelming for me at times. But from the time I walked on stage to the time I walked off stage, I had 14 new text messages. It's overwhelming. And so sometimes the temptation is to ignore it. And when we ignore our online or our phones, it has real life consequences. Because there's people attached to that. And it creates this messiness in our relationships. And sometimes I fail at this. And it hurts people. But we long for these relationships. We long for intimacy, but we honestly don't know how to do it. And sometimes, if we are really honest, we're scared to do it. God made us that way. He made us to be people that crave the things we're craving, but he didn't make us to satisfy those cravings in the way that we're currently doing it. Friendship isn't supposed to just be on our terms. And if we keep living like this, we're going to end up in a really bad place. Because we are simultaneously more connected and more alone than ever before. We are simultaneously more connected and more alone than we ever have been before in the history of the world. And we will never live into Jesus' command in John 13 to allow our relationships and the way we love the people in those relationships to be the primary marker that identifies us as followers of Jesus. We'll never live into that command unless we figure out how to do relationships differently. And my hope, my longing is that we together could move, that we could start to break that trend even in our own church. And I'm committed to trying to do that as your pastor. I'm committed to trying to do that better in my family. But I want to be really upfront and real that I still struggle with this. And we need each other if this is ever going to change. We have to start practicing the power of presence. I believe that we can change this trend. I believe that we can interrupt this cycle in our own lives, but we have to make some changes in the way we relate. I'm going to give you 2 really simple things we can do. They sound simple on paper, but they're difficult in real life, especially because of the habits we have. And the first one is this. If you're longing for real relationships, you have to choose to be present. You have to choose to be present with people. I'm going to give you an opportunity to commit to something right now. And so this is Full Contact Church. You guys get to speak with me. I'm going to give you something to say, and you repeat it back to me. We'll keep saying it until we believe it's true, right? So repeat after me. I will love people face to face and not thumbs to thumbs. You get it? All right? We're going to choose to love people face to face and not thumbs to thumbs. And if you're married, I encourage you to love not only face to face, but belly to belly. All right? Strongly encourage this. Hi, that's a whole nother series. We'll do that at a different time. All right? Some people are super uncomfortable right now. You're welcome. Welcome to Life Church Livonia. Real people, real God, real life. Here we go. We have to choose to be present. I love what Paul writes to the Romans about this when he's talking about relationships to them. I'm just going to read you some snippets from sections of Scripture from Romans 12, verses 9 through 10, and parts of verse 13. These are just snippets of those Scriptures. Paul says this to them as they're trying to figure out relationships. Don't just pretend to love others, really love them. He goes on later, it says, love each other with genuine affection and take delight in honoring each other. And then later in verse 13, when God's people are in need, be ready to help them. These are all things that help us be present, that we're not just pretending. We're actually loving people with genuine affection, that when God's people are in need, we're ready to step in and engage and be present. Think about this one moment right here for the friend who's hurting, or maybe it's the friend who it's their birthday. Think about the acceptable ways to engage those things. You hear that it's your friend's birthday, and an acceptable way to engage that would be to simply send them a text, happy birthday, or get on Facebook and say, it's your birthday, and share like a silly little video, right? That's an acceptable way to be present with someone, but it's not the best way. The same thing is true when people are in need. You hear that someone's struggling, and you send them a quick text. Hey, I heard that your day was really rough. Just want to know you. I'm thinking about you and praying for you. That's acceptable. But what would be better, especially in those times of need? What would be better? To pick up the phone, to call the person, have a real voice on the other end of the line and say, hey, I heard that your day was really tough. I just wanted you to know I love you. And I don't know how I can help, but I want you to know that I'm here. I'm your friend. I want to be present with you. That's a better way. But you want to know what the best way is? Show up. Be fully, physically present with those people as they struggle. This is tough for us. It's tough for me because it messes up our schedule, right? It messes up our rhythms and our routines, and it tweaks with our introversion. I always tell people I'm actually by nature a social introvert, but I'm extroverted for the sake of the gospel. I make myself be extroverted, but I run out of energy. I run out of juice, especially Sunday afternoons. I'm like on empty. So I have to get up and choose to be present with people. I was thinking about this moment in my own life when I started a job as a youth pastor at a church in Muskegon, Michigan, across the other side of the state. And this is about a decade ago, and I was still, fairly young pastor, and still kind of learning what it meant to really care well for people and to be present with people as a pastor. And I had just started my job there. I was the youth pastor over senior high and middle school ministries. I'd gone on a middle school ministries mission trip, taking a bunch of students from here, driven around Lake Michigan, and gone over the other side to Milwaukee. And we'd spent a week in the inner city of Milwaukee serving together. And when you do that kind of a mission trip, you get to know each other really, really well in a really short amount of time. And one of the young ladies that was on that trip, that was a part of my team, when we got back from that trip, shortly thereafter, I got a message that her stepdad, the father figure in her life, had been shot. He was a real estate agent, and someone had walked into his office, a disgruntled former person that had worked with them, a client, with a gun. He pulled it out, and he shot this man, Troy, in the head. And they call me, and they say, he's in the hospital on life support. What did I do? I didn't text him. Heard your dad's in the hospital. Sorry. Praying for you. I didn't call and say, hey, I heard what happened. Sorry, praying for you. I got in my car and I drove to the hospital, terrified to do so. Let's be real for a moment. I didn't know what I was going to do when I was present. Like, what do you say to a family like that? How do you comfort them? What kind of advice do you give? What kind of prayers do you pray? I was having this like pastoral crisis moment. But I felt like God was saying to me, just go, just be present. And I can't tell you what I said that day. I have no recollection of it. I can vividly bring up the picture of what it looked like to be there that day, sitting around this hospital bed, crying with people, praying with people, being present with people. I didn't do it perfectly. In fact, I left the hospital that day thinking, gosh, that was a total fail. Like, Brian, you got to do better than that. But later I heard from that family that my simple act of presence with them made a massive impact in their time of grief. Huge impact. Presence matters. It matters more than you could possibly imagine. A text wouldn't have cut it in that moment. Now, once again, I can't pretend that I'm perfect about this, but I want to commit to being that kind of a pastor with you. But in order to be present with people when they're in times of need, we have to know that you have times of need, which requires authenticity, and we're going to talk about that next week. Come back for that. We have to be present. And I think that, just as kind of a side note today, I think that being present with people is never more important than when we pray for people. Because what I've seen over and over again in life is that there's a massive difference between praying for someone and praying with someone. What I mean by that is it's one thing for me to say to you, I'll pray for you, and to actually do it. And I believe God moves in that way, that it doesn't require us to have a close proximity for prayer to work, right? But there's something relationally beautiful that happens when you pray with someone. Twice in the last month, I've been a part of praying for someone and with someone as they're sitting there with us, where the person after we're done praying has said something along the lines of, that was the most beautiful prayer that I've ever heard prayed. And as I walked away, and I would have conversation with the other individuals who were there praying with me, regularly what would happen is we would look at each other and say, wow, I didn't really think there was anything special about that prayer. It wasn't that the words were special, it's that we did it with them, and it was relationally intimate and beautiful, and that's what made it the most beautiful prayer that the person had ever heard, because people don't do that with each other. They don't pray with each other. They pray for each other via text and virtually, online. And there's something missing. There's something missing, and it's our presence. It's our presence. If we want to have deep, beautiful relationships that are intimate and go deep, we have to learn to be present. But we also have to move beyond our mere presence to actually being engaged. We have to choose to be engaged. This is way more difficult. And you know what this looks like. You know about the people who are physically present, but emotionally, relationally, and spiritually completely disengaged. You know what that looks like because sometimes it's you. Sometimes it's me. I struggle with this, especially when I'm tired, especially when I've had an emotionally draining week, especially when ministry has been really busy, especially if I'm wrestling deeply with a sermon that I have to preach that I don't feel I've mastered, right? That I can be physically present with you, but emotionally and relationally disengaged. But here's the problem. We have to engage if we're going to live into God's call to love one another well. 1 Peter 4:8 says, most important of all, continue to show deep love for each other. That word deep is important. That it's not surface level love, it's a depth of love, a depth of intimacy that we will never get to unless we engage. You see it all the time, especially with students. I see it with my children's friends, and they're all sitting together at the same table, and none of them are talking to each other, and they're all on their phones. I see them hanging out in their rooms at home, and their friends are sitting on the bed with them, and they're texting each other, or Snapchatting each other, or whatever it is they're doing, but they're not talking, they're not engaged, and they feel like they're engaging, but it is only a semblance of relationship. And it's not just limited to children or to teenagers, it's us. I do this sometimes. Where our game or our show or our social media feed, it becomes more important than the people that are sitting right next to us. If you have kids, you know what this is like. Your little kids are begging for your attention, and you're hiding in the bathroom watching videos of people doing yoga with goats, right? You're laughing because you've watched those videos. I know you have. And you feel like you have permission or you need permission to disengage to get reinvigorated. We've told ourselves that lie, that the way to get reinvigorated is to disengage, is a lie from the devil. Disengagement from all people, including God, does not reinvigorate us. It actually depletes us. It's a matter of engaging with the right people in the right way. And it's a matter of engaging with God. We have to learn to engage. But we are so scared that we will miss out on something that we don't. Did you know that last year they added a brand new word to the dictionary? I didn't even know what this word was, to be honest with you. I had to look it up in the dictionary, but I'd heard about it. The word is FOMO, F-O-M-O. You know what it stands for? Fear of missing out. Boom. It's a real word, Merriam-Webster. They made it so. They had to put that word in the dictionary because it's how people live their life. Imagine if you did with your body what you do with your hands and with your eyes. Picture this. You go to coffee with a friend, or you go to dinner with your group of friends, and instead of every 5 minutes picking up your phone, and checking your whatever you're checking, and then putting it down, that was an act of disengagement right now I just did. Some of you probably felt like that was pretty awkward even the moment that I did it right now myself. I really did get a text, by the way. Imagine if instead of just doing it with your hands and with your eyes, you did it with your body. And every 5 minutes at dinner with your friends, you got up and walked away from the table and then came back. And then 10 minutes later, you did it again and you came back. And 15 minutes later, you did it again and you came back. How awkward would that be? And what would that do relationally? It would damage your relationships with people. So we don't do it with our bodies fully, but we do it with our eyes and with our hands. And we do it with our mind. We choose to disengage. And especially if you are a parent, and I am taking my own medicine here, this is huge. One of the things I've been working really hard to do, my wife and I have been talking about this, is that when our youngest, Antoine, comes to me and says, Daddy, will you play Frisbee with me? I'm working really hard to always say yes. Now, it's impossible to always say yes, honestly, because he would do things like that with you all day, every day. And at some point, you have to do other things in life, right? Literally, he would play. He wants someone to play with him 24/7. I mean, he wakes up in the morning and is standing by your bed in a creepy fashion, ready to play, right? I saw someone posted, that's the best kind of haunted house. You don't need a haunted house. You just need to wake up and roll over and see a child standing there. It's scarier than anything. But even though I can't satisfy that desire that he has to be intimate relationally with me 24/7, I can satisfy it more regularly than I do. Talk about a slice of humble pie. I'm eating the whole pie right now. Like I'm baking the pies. I got like a humble pie bakery at my house right now. We have to choose to engage. So one of the rules I've been trying to institute in my own life is that I'm just going to put it down and walk outside. I've played more Frisbee and more catch with Antoine in the past 3 weeks than probably the past 3 months before that. And I know that that's an area where I'm struggling. But it's one of my new rules. I'm just going to say yes. What kind of rules do you need to put in place? And some of you are going to be really tempted today to literally throw it all away. Some of you are like, that's it. We are going home. I am canceling cable TV. I am canceling Netflix. I am going to burn our computers, and we are going back to flip phones, people. Yes, we are going back to the flip phones. And you just want to throw it all out. And I would urge you to do something, but start with something that's manageable. Start with something that's manageable. Maybe it's like you're like me. You're just going to choose to say yes to your son when he wants to play Frisbee way more often than you currently have. Maybe it's going to have to do with a rule that you institute at dinner time, or maybe your friends and you are going to agree to a rule that when you guys go out together, that you're going to choose to put your phones down. Maybe it's going to happen in your life group, that you're going to choose to silence your phones during your small group time. I don't know what it looks like for you. Maybe it has something to do with phones and bedtime. Because listen, if you're married and you're laying in bed next to your spouse and you've ever considered texting them to see if they're in the mood, you have issues, okay? There's a problem here, people. They're laying next to you, right? I just made it really awkward again. I'm sorry. Sorry, hashtag not sorry, okay? For that. Imagine, even if you're not married and never want to be married, imagine trying to actually create deep, beautiful relationship and intimacy within your marriage if you only used technology to engage one another. What would happen? What would happen if you didn't engage with your spouse any other way than through technology? I will tell you what will happen. Your marriage will die. Your marriage will die. And some of you are doing that right now. Some of you are doing that right now. You have deeper conversations with your spouse via text than you ever have face-to-face. It's a problem. Some of you are choosing to disengage intimately with people and instead to engage virtually with people sexually. And it's damaging you relationally. We have to choose to be present. We have to choose to be engaged. And we have to choose to act if we will ever find the kind of relationships we're longing to have. We have to choose to become the type of friend that we long to experience in our life. And I believe that it's going to take some serious action on our part. 1 John 3:18 says, "Dear children, let's not merely say that we love each other. Let us show the truth by our actions." We have to not just pray for people, but choose to pray with people. We have to not just choose to like something online, but actually to do something physically with people. And I believe that if we start living like this, if Life Church Livonia, if even half of us start living into this, it's going to have a ripple effect throughout our entire community and throughout our life. And even people that don't believe what we believe will begin to want what we have. You go back to what Jesus said, "They will know that you are my followers by the way you love one another." We go back to the early first century church that was growing like crazy because people saw something that they had and they wanted it before they even knew what they believed. This is what Jesus said it was so important to love one another, that they will be the primary marker of what it meant to be one of his followers. But we can't just decide to do this on our own and live in a bubble. We need each other. It's why Hebrews 10:24-25 says, "Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works, and let us not neglect our meeting together as some people do, but encourage one another as the day draws near." We have to be thinking about ways that I can engage Kylie and say, "Hey, Kylie, how can I help you love people better?" And I can engage Josh. This is what you get for sitting in the front row. And say, "How can I help you love people in your life better?" And the other people around the room, "How can I engage you and help you? And how can you help me?" That's what the author of the book of Hebrews is saying. We got to be thinking about ways to motivate one another to greater acts of love and good works. Not because it's some legalism, but because it's right and holy and makes us whole. and allows us to live into the type of relationships with the people that God created us to have. We need each other. It's part of the reason why we push these life groups, these small groups that we gather in. It's part of the reason Jeff still has a table out there weeks on end encouraging you to sign up. It's part of the reason why we do events like this upcoming party that we're going to do with cider and donuts that we're doing for the community, is we want people to get out of their homes and get face-to-face and begin the process of connecting, and it's really hard. And it's really scary. And it's really important. Coming from your introvert pastor, it's super important. I need relationships, and you do too. What I don't want you to do is walk away from here feeling terrible about yourself. The last thing I want you to do is walk out this door today and feel like, well, great, I totally get a big fat F on my friend report card. Like failing. I know I'm not present. I know I'm not engaged. Skip it. I'm just done. The last thing I want you to do, and that's the last thing Jesus would have wanted to have you feel, is shame over the way that you're struggling. Here's the beautiful thing about Jesus. The beautiful thing about our God is that our God didn't choose to just shout his love to you from the heavens. Our God didn't just choose to stay disengaged and not present and let us know in some miraculous fashion that he loved us and he wanted to be engaged with us and wanted to be in a relationship with us. What did he do? He became flesh to be present and to engage. That's what Jesus did. When he came to his disciples and said, "A new command I give you, to love people the way that I loved," he was living it. He wasn't just talking about the love that he was expressing to them by washing their feet or sitting and having a meal. He was talking about his entire life. His very presence on earth was an act of being engaged with humanity and loving us the way that we needed to be loved so desperately. Jesus says, engage with me first. Be present with me first, and I will teach you how to do this because I'm the best at it. No one is better than Jesus at this. He ate with people. He partied with people. He wept with people. He walked with people. But everywhere he went, he was fully present and he was fully engaged. And the people that he interacted with were fully alive. This is what it means to be a follower of Jesus. Fully engaged and fully alive. And that's what I long for you. And it's what I long for me. So that when we hear John 13, and we hear Jesus' words, and he says, "A new command I give you. Love one another as I have loved you." As I have loved you. It starts with Jesus. So you must love one another. By this marker, everyone will know that you are my people. This one thing, if you love one another. If you are struggling with this and asking the question, I don't even know where to start, I will tell you, I believe the best place to start is with Jesus. Today is an opportunity to choose to be present with God, to choose to engage with God instead of running from God. Before you even come to grips with all of the things that means you need to believe, before you ever come to grips with all of your theological questions, before you come to grips with your poor church attendance, the very first thing that God longs for you to do is simply be present with him and to engage deeply and to experience his love. It's where it all begins. So I want to give you that opportunity today to just pause for a moment, to pray, maybe to confess, but to engage God. That's what prayer is. It's us engaging God. So would you pray with me? So Jesus, before we go any further, I just want to confess that there are ways that I have struggled with this, even this week, ways that I have failed in this area. Times when I needed to be present and I wasn't. Times when I needed to engage and I didn't. And I know that that can't just be true for me. It's true for so many people in this room. So right now, in the quiet of our own hearts, we just choose to confess that we have struggled here and that we have failed. And we need your forgiveness and we need people's forgiveness. And so, God, we just pray, bring to mind the people that we've done that with right now. Bring those people to mind and give us the courage to engage them this week. And Jesus, for the people that are here today that know that there's a massive hole in their life that nothing seems to fill, for those people that know that there's something missing, God, I pray that right now, in the quiet of their own hearts, that they would just choose to be present with you, to acknowledge your presence in this place, and to engage you. If that's you, I just encourage you right now to pray in the quiet of your own heart and to say, God, here I am. I don't have all my questions figured out. I still struggle with some of the things that are going on in my life, but I choose to engage you. I ask that you would accept me as your own, that you would call me your child, that you would shower me with your love and your grace because I desperately need that hole in my life filled by you. I choose to commit myself to you, to be present with you, to engage you today. Jesus, show us what it means to be a friend. Show us what it means to have intimacy. Show us what it means to be loved and to love one another. We commit this time of worship to you in the name of Jesus. Amen.